Ladies and gentlemen of the Ring Crew Army, thank you for tuning in to a brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and on this episode of the Square Circle Podcast, I will be going over the Road to the New Beginning series over on New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling is one of the hottest wrestling promotions in the world. Do not debate me on that. They put out a better product all around, even if you do not understand what goes on within New Japan Pro Wrestling. I just recently got back my subscription to New Japan Pro Wrestling, so I am getting right back into it. And I am definitely aligning myself. And I'm definitely aligning myself with the real Bullet Club of the wrestling world. So here is a quick recap of what's been happening just in the first week of February. Within New Japan Pro Wrestling, we all thought that Jay White was done with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but that is not the case. He came back on February 1st to attack Ishii and start his way back to one day possibly dethrone Kota Ibushi for his double championships. But Jay White claims that Ishii was the missing piece in his puzzle to obtain his destino. After that, on February 2nd, on the Road to the New Beginning, we have a 10-man tag elimination style match, which you guys can definitely check that out. That's the latest podcast episode from the Square Circle Podcast by me. It is called Jay White, Still My Era, a Road to the New Beginning at New Japan Pro Wrestling review. So go check that out. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you guys think about my match breakdown and then just the overall psychology breakdown of these guys. I take huge pride into knowing if I get it right, if I do it right, or if I have you change your perspective on something. So during that 10-man tag elimination, Bullet Club picked up their first victory against their opponents, which were members of Chaos. And then Jay White decides to cut a promo and he throws out the challenge to Ishii, Goto, and Yoshihashi to challenge them for their 6-man tag team championships. This is the never open weight tag team championships that they have. Then we get to this podcast currently, because this podcast is going to be reviewing the February 3rd edition of the Road to the New Beginning series, where it is another tag team match, but this is a 6-man tag team match, so it's a little bit more controlled, yet it comes with double standards. You guys would definitely understand what I mean when I take a look at Jay White's backstage comments. And everything that he says in that promo is 100% true. And then we'll talk about all the New Japan Pro Wrestling news in regards to Jay White's double standard promo. But before we get into me reviewing the match, I just want to say thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for coming along for the ride. And I highly appreciate everyone that ever listens to me talk about pro wrestling. Again, this is my super passion. This is what I love to do, and this is all that I know. And having you guys here listen to me and my perspective is amazing. So thank you to all the new, future, current, and day one listeners ever since I made this podcast. It is an amazing ride, and I get to talk about something that I know quite a lot about. So let's jump right into this 6-man tag. On one side, we have Evil, Jay White, and Yujiro. They make up the team of Bullet Club. And then on the other side, we have Okada, Ishii, and Yano making up the team of Chaos. So right off the bat, Ishii comes in with some quick attacks to Jay White. Evil and Yujiro help with the beatdown on Ishii, but then Okada and Yano come in to help both sides. Jay White makes Ishii chase him, which is a very smart move. Jay White then gets back into the ring, and as soon as Ishii comes in right after him, Jay White is throwing some European uppercuts to Ishii and forearms. Ishii then throws Jay White into the ropes, but Jay White smartly hangs on to the ropes and roll out onto the outside thinking that he's safe. However, Yano gets down on the apron, runs right after Jay White on the outside. Okada helps out Yano in attacking Jay White. Then back in the ring, there is a clothesline by Ishii. Then Ishii tries to pick up Jay, but Jay escapes and rolls out to the outside, creating some space between himself and Ishii. Then during the match, Gato again comes in with a distraction to help out Jay White. This allows Jay White to do a dragon screw to Ishii's leg. And then Jay DDTs him. And Jay starts working on the leg of Ishii. Evil gets tagged in this match and throws Ishii into the exposed turnbuckles twice. Jay throws Ishii chest first into exposed turnbuckles as well. There is a snap Saito suplex by Jay to Ishii, and then Ishii just takes that and comes in with a big suplex to Jay White. There is some fighting between Evil and Okada. Remember, guys, Evil and Okada have this feud going on, and eventually New Japan Pro Wrestling Management is probably going to give Okada what he wants, which is a match against Evil. Okada does a flapjack to Yujiro, and then now we have Yano versus Yujiro. Ishii comes in with a suplex, most likely onto Jay White. And then Dick Togo tries to grab Yano's foot, which Yano is on the apron. And Yujiro tries to take advantage of this. But instead, there's miscommunication and Yujiro hits Dick Togo. And this allows Yano to come in with a low blow onto Yujiro and roll up Yujiro for the win. And this time around, this gives a victory advantage to the Chaos members. So, cool. Chaos picked up the victory. Not a problem. However, during the post-match beatdown, you still have Ishii going after Jay White. And Ishii is throwing forearms, throwing him into the barricade, back first, chest first, and then brings him over to the commentary side. And Ishii encourages Goto to come over, and Goto comes over and hits Jay White, and both Ishii and Goto are tag teaming their beatdown on Jay White. This is not supposed to happen in New Japan Pro Wrestling with all of their strict rules. Jay White follows all of their strict rules, especially during this time that we're in the COVID era, and Goto just comes over and tag teams with Ishii and beats up Jay White. No one really stops Ishii and Goto from their attack on Jay White. Gato doesn't get involved at this point. He tries yelling from a distance so that he doesn't get hurt. Evil is probably still fighting with Okada, or Evil probably went to the back. So sometimes around the ring, they will have the young boys there, and there's two specific young boys that have been helping out during these Road to weekly shows, which one of them is Gabriel Kidd, and the other one is Yoda Tsuji. And at least for Tsuji, he tries to take Goto off of Jay White, but that really doesn't work too well until they both finally realize that they should just go to the back. And when I say they, I mean Ishii and Goto. So after Ishii and Goto, get enough of their fight in against Jay White, Jay White decides to take a chair and he hits Tsuji, and he also hits Gabriel Kidd, and he has this violent mean streak that comes out. And he is totally pissed off. He is upset because this is where we get into his comments about New Japan Pro Wrestling having a double standard. So he's in the back, he's giving his comments, and he doesn't even make it through all of his comments because Ishii comes through that door and Ishii starts throwing forearms at him. Gato tries to choke him out with the switchblade towel. However, Ishii is really strong and he definitely plays up his Stone Pitbull persona and gives Gato one forearm to the chest, and Gato is down, and Ishii takes Jay White, battling him to the back. And then sometime later, we see Jay come through that same door that he got pulled into the back. He comes out again. He has a chair with him and he is completely pissed off. And he basically makes his statements saying that, there's a double standard within New Japan Pro Wrestling. If Jay White did the same thing that Ishii and Goto was doing, then all the young boys and everyone will have tried to pull Jay White apart from the person he was beating up, and he would get reprimanded and probably fined, maybe suspended, but nothing really happens to Goto for his mistakes. Goto does apologize to the New Japan Pro Wrestling management. He knew the rules. He knew he wasn't supposed to do that. So basically, New Japan Pro Wrestling gave Goto a formal caution warning and didn't take Goto out the match. More news about that coming up on the February 8th edition of the last Road to the New Beginning before we get to Hiroshima Sun Plaza Hall for both February 10th and February 11th. Because that was what Jay White was saying, that there should be some type of repercussions for hitting a professional wrestler. Like, if you are on commentary, the rule is that you are not allowed to touch the crowd. You are not allowed to touch the wrestlers. You are on commentary. You're behind your own plastic booth, just giving commentary on the match. If you decide to jump over that guardrail, there's going to be some repercussions. But, you know, in this case, Goto got let go with a slap on the wrist, so to speak. So all commentators know these rules. Even Goto knows these rules, but he broke it. And Jay White's point is that if he would have done that, everybody would have been on him and scolding him and making sure that he knows not to do it again. And this is where we're at. So Jay White is still completely justified in every single promo that he puts out for us to hear. And we'll see what happens. We still got a couple more days before February 11th. February 11th is when the Never Openweight 6-man tag team championships will be on the line. And it will definitely be Jay White, the Gorillas of Destiny, which is Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, taking on Goto, Yoshihashi, and Ishii. However, if Jay White gets his way, it will definitely maybe come down to a handicap match, maybe a 2-on-3 or a 1-on-3, because some more actions unfolded on the next Road to the New Beginning, which was today, which is Monday, February 8th, which you guys will get that podcast episode soon, because once again, it involves Jay White and the Bullet Club and Ishii and this whole entire storyline. So Jay White and the Bullet Club know exactly what they're doing with their opponents and the fans. Jay White loves getting under the skin of his opponents, taunting them, making sure to get inside their heads so that way their anger can overtake, and Jay White can definitely capitalize on that. Jay White commands the actions of his opponents, even if sometimes he'll get knocked down or have that chip on his shoulder where it can eventually cause a slight opening for his opponents to get the upper hand on him. But other than that, he's basically flawless in his delivery of his promos and the delivery of the story that he tells inside the ring. Between him and Ishii, it paints a wonderful picture of just how great, making Ishii look really strong and making himself look strong too, but in the cunning way, in the opposite way that he would with Ishii, because essentially you want everybody to cheer for Ishii. You want everybody to be like, yeah, we're going to get behind Ishii's back, and, you know, Ishii should beat the shit out of Jay for everything that Jay has caused him. However, Jay is also good with getting the sympathy and the empathy that he requires from the fans and invoke a emotion and an understanding that Jay White uses reality to keep you grounded in his perception. Fans on the internet like to say that he's paranoid, but it's not really paranoia if you're telling the truthful events of what's actually unfolding and letting people know, well, this is the case. These are the facts. You know, it's one of those where it's like, why do I get reprimanded for something, but they don't get reprimanded, but it's the same action that you guys did? It's one of those. So that plays a very good part in human psychology, because growing up as kids, we all experience that. And even into adult life. And that's Jay White's power right there when it comes to his character and everything that he does, that he makes you think about the reality. He makes you think about the facts presented, and that's like a really strong weapon there. If you could get people on your side because you can tell them the facts and they're gonna side with you and they're like, yeah, I can't really be that mad at you, but you do make a good point for this and that. And that's one of Jay White's biggest weapons. His other biggest weapon too is whenever he's in the ring, he has the awareness to duck, and that makes moves a little bit more amazing to watch, because not all wrestlers use ducking to their advantage to get the slight opening and do a Saito suplex to their opponent, like what he did to Ishii when Ishii did a couple of back elbows and Jay just dodges them and then ducks under Ishii's other arm and then Saito suplex him. Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, that's everything that I have to say about that 6-man tag. It was a little bit short, but it provided enough commentary to break down stuff here and there. And they're doing a good job of pushing this story forward, even if they're not giving us everything. I'm not the type that I want the whole entire story in my hand. I want something decent. And I want something where I can sink my teeth into so I could be like, next week, this is what's happening. All right, guys, that is everything I have for February 3rd, New Japan Pro Wrestling Road to the New Beginning. Every single Road to the New Beginning took place in Korakuen Hall, which is in Tokyo. So we have left on the schedule of New Japan World. And by the way, if you guys are not signed up to newjapanworld.com, please go do so. Get a subscription so that way whenever I talk about these matches, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You guys see the same thing that I see. And if you guys disagree, you guys can always let me know that you disagree. It's totally okay. So don't forget to head over to NJPWworld.com to get your subscription. And that's a free plug. I am not on New Japan Pro Wrestling's payroll. So we have February 10th, February 11th, February 14th, and February 15th. As far as I know, and the world knows, on February 10th, they will be at Hiroshima Sun Plaza. So on February 10th, we are going to have a 10-man tag. On one side, it will be Okada, Ishii, Goto, Yoshihashi, and Yano taking on El Fantasma, Ishimori, Yujiro, Jay White, and Evo. It is another 10-man tag. I am not sure what the stipulation for this is, but it is listed as a 30-minute time limit match. So we're going to see how that goes on February 10th. Also, on February 10th, it will be the Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, who are the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Champions, defending their titles against Zack Sabre Jr. and Tachi. If Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa are successful in retaining the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Championships, they will be teaming with Jay White the next night on February 11th, taking on Goto, Ishii, and Yoshihashi for their never openweight 6-man tag team championships. And if Jay White, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa are successful, they will hold so much gold that in this sense, you're going to have to believe that the real Bullet Club is firmly placed in Japan and it's not in AEW at all. So I am completely excited for that 6-man tag match, and I'm excited for Jay White, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa to get more gold, not only in the Bullet Club, but on them as well, and show the world why Bullet Club is really a brotherhood and why they are a force to be reckoned with. And again, you guys can definitely follow along with me on this podcast to understand the stories and my match breakdowns and anything else once you get the New Japan Pro Wrestling subscription as well. It's definitely going to be a fun couple of wrestling days, and I'm excited to watch all these matches and give you guys the breakdown. So that's everything. Be prepared for some more New Japan Pro Wrestling content coming your way. And no, I have not forgotten about All Elite Wrestling. You guys will get some All Elite Wrestling content as well on the Square Circle podcast. But for right now, Jay White is making pro wrestling exciting, and Jay White is making Bullet Club exciting. And then you have the Gorillas of Destiny also helping that out as well and making these storylines really great for me to break down. Sometimes I need a challenge in the wrestling world where I know that hard work really pays off. And I'm not saying that everyone in All Elite Wrestling don't work hard. They work their asses off, but the intensity and the attention to detail gets me more excited from the New Japan side, from the real Bullet Club side, rather than All Elite Wrestling. I am definitely not trying to start some type of division within my podcast, but that's just how I feel, man. I get more excited for New Japan Pro Wrestling than I do with All Elite Wrestling, because right now it just seems like they don't really know exactly what to do in a sense. But this is not an AEW podcast. This is a New Japan Pro Wrestling podcast episode. So if you want the AEW podcast episode, stay tuned. It's definitely coming. And you guys can definitely follow me on all my socials. I am currently active on Twitter at Marie_Shadows. You guys can definitely sign up to my wrestling newsletter that has a Jay White article on there and other articles in regards to All Elite Wrestling. You can sign up at theringcrew.substack.com. And then you can also leave me a voice message via anchor.fm/Square Circle Podcast. I love hearing everyone's opinions about professional wrestling. I love hearing your opinions on my professional wrestling takes. I have a lot of opinions about the business and a lot of opinions about wrestling in general. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Square Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I hope you enjoy this. And if you do, show me some love, because I'll see you guys on the next one.